Hello. Welcome back to the 100 Report. I'm Chris.
I'm Charlie.
Our names are actually the other way around, and I just was taking the piss of Chris because I love the fact that every time we open with a show, he says hello 3 times.
It's sort of a force of habit, really. I can't really understand why I do it. It's just the natural flow of what I do to say hello. I'm just that chatty kind of guy. But anyway, how you doing? You all right?
Very friendly. I'm doing well. We're closer to the date where the pub gardens are open, April 12th. So it's the countdown now. I don't know when we're going to release this episode, but at present we're still in lockdown. So I'm really excited about that. How about you?
Yeah, can't wait. Cannot wait. It's going to be so nice. It's strange, isn't it? Because throughout all of this lockdown, and basically anybody who's listening outside of the UK, we've been in lockdown since just before Christmas last year, and it's been strict lockdown. And I think everybody's just getting a little bit just sort of done with it. But you know, it's obviously important and has to be done. But you see the same few people, and I think everyone's just chomping at the bit. And especially now that the weather, at long last, is becoming more like spring. We're all just.
I was going to comment on the weather. But I knew that you would do that for me anyway. We're both very British in that respect. We always talk about the weather, every single conversation. That's what we have to talk about in England. We're going to start off with the men's team. We're talking about the Trent Rockets this week. Yeah. And they've got, I think, a formidable team. So I'm really excited to look through this breakdown. Their coach is Stephen Fleming. Now, according to Nasser Hussain, Stephen Fleming is a serial winner. Wherever he goes in any franchise, he does his homework, and he's apparently up there to sort of win the competitions. And I think it's because what he likes to do, his strategy is very much choose from the local players and develop that team spirit. You have 4 or 5 days in which to do that. And he's very much into picking local players that really know their conditions. Let's start with the England central contracted player. We have Joe Root, who is a formidable player. He sadly has been left out of the England T20 squad. And I think that's going to give him all the more reason to really prove himself in the 100, because I know for a fact that he really wants to get back into this format. He wants to be in all 3 formats for England.
You know, the big debate with the T20 team and the structure is that Joe Root is that kind of anchor batsman, and David Milan has basically just taken over. We'll get to David Milan, but at the moment he's cemented in that England spot. Not having a great time in India at the moment, but I feel that given that he is the number 1 ranked T20 batsman, he's just having a bit of an odd patch, and he is not like the other T20 batsmen in that he cements an innings. And Joe Root is very much in that vein. And I think with a lot of T20 teams, you can really only afford to have one of those players in your squad.
To be known as the glue in England is a great thing. Obviously, everybody needs a glue in their team. But I think that the shorter the format, the less, the more you look at the strike rate and the less need there is for a glue figure. Because to go through all of the batsmen, you'd have to be pretty unlucky in 100 balls. But, these things can happen. So we'll see. We're going to go with the first international pick. They stuck with all of their international players that they got last year. And actually, they got first pick of the whole draft last year. They went with Rashid Khan. Not to anyone's surprise, Rashid Khan is arguably the best white ball bowler in the world. His stats, he's got that golden economy rate of 6 for T20, and he averages 17. He's got 6 fourfers, 2 fifers. And I think I said this to you last time, I forget he's 22 years old. He's got so much experience, and he's still only 22 years old.
Yeah, there are not enough superlatives for Rashid Khan. And obviously, anybody who follows the IPL knows Rashid Khan, and his stats are incredible. He's so young. He's already the greatest bowler that Afghanistan have ever produced. And in their young international life, he's become one of the legends. I've been watching a bit of the Zimbabwe-Afghanistan series, and it's just a level of quality that bowler has. It's unreal, so much so that a lot of even like younger Indian players, I remember the commentators on the England-India series were talking about this, that bowlers are emulating Rashid Khan in that they're bowling a bit quicker, they're firing into the pitch, they're developing 4 or 5 different balls to bowl. He is certainly as a spin bowler, the best acquisition that you could have had in the 100 box office. Cannot wait to see him.
Yeah, me too. Okay, next up we've got the second international pick. They went with Darcy Short, a left-handed bat, Australian opener rather. He had a really great season last season with the Hobart Hurricanes in the Big Bash League. He got a high score of 122 not out. So it would have been interesting to see how many runs he would have scored, because even to get 100 T20 is pretty awesome, but 122 not out. But also his figures with the ball, 521.
Wow.
Handy left arm leg spin he has, and he also has got good practice in English conditions, because he had a really successful T20 blast with Durham. So what a fantastic all-rounder, left-hand bat, opening batsman with great stats. No wonder why they went with Darcy Short.
Yeah, and that left-hand bat at the top of the order, it's vital. And you can see, again, in the England series, they're constantly looking, especially during that middle over period, they always want to have a left-hand, right-hand combination. And I think that's where they're getting stuck at the moment, because players like Moeen Ali, Sam Curran, Ben Stokes, they're all left-handed. So it's about that balance. But having a lefty at the top of the order, it's great. I forgot how good this team was.
They really are a force to reckon with. Their last international pick, they stuck with Nathan Coulter-Nile, another Australian right-arm fast bowler, and he's a great athlete. He's a staple, obviously, in the Australian limited over formats, and great success in the Big Bash League and the IPL. In fact, last year he went for big bucks in the IPL auction. He also had a really successful time in the last year's World Cup with Australia. He scored the highest by a number 8, he got 92, and his T20 strike rate is 134, which is pretty good for a bowler. So yeah, really handy player to have, and can't wait to see him in action as well.
It's like you say, down the order, having a high strike rate is the most important thing, because often you're only going to get 15, 20 runs because you're just smashing the last 5 balls. So it's all about your strike rate rather than the amount of runs you get.
They've named their captain. They've stuck with the same captain that they named last year. They've got Lewis Gregory, all-rounder, seam bowler. In 2008, his T20 blast stats were amazing, and he hit 328 runs at a strike rate of over 200. So he has a great time in the T20 blast, and also good captaincy experience. He was the England under-19 captain and the England Lions captain. But he's also got a really good death over strike rate of 211 against pace. So he can really fire towards the end. He's got PSL experience, BBL experience, and a good head on his shoulders as captain.
Well, one of the reasons I was looking away at that point was because I did remember this, that Lewis Gregory is also following us on Twitter, which is quite fun. So thank you, Lewis Gregory. Hope you're enjoying this. And if you guys are not following us on Twitter yet, then please do. We are at 100 Report on Twitter, and we are at the 100 Report on Instagram and YouTube. But that's enough plug-in. Shall we? I just got to get it. Should we carry on?
Have a good plug. We're going to talk about Alex Hales next, because this team is just looking better and better. He's also the teammate of Lewis Gregory for Islamabad United in the PSL. And as we know, we've documented quite a few times, he's been left out of the England camp. There are talks recently. I've seen a couple of interviews on Sky Sports, and Owen Morgan's asked that question again and again. Have you made contact with Alex Hales? Ed Smith's been asked that question too, and they're slowly opening up to the idea that there might have been talks recently with Alex Hales, and it just hasn't been the right time with lockdown and all these bio bubbles to sort of get him back into the mix. So fingers crossed, he could be opening the door into England in the near future, because there is really, arguably, he is the best T20 batsman at the moment going. He got the golden bat at last year's Big Bash League, and his T20 average is 30, strike rate 144. But get this, he's got 4 centuries and 51 50s in domestic T20s. He's also got quite a few in the internationals as well. So, he is arguably the best batsman around, and you can't ignore him. He keeps popping up everywhere. And his franchise experience, the fact that he's been left out of the England squad, he goes to all of the franchises, and so his experience in the shorter formats is just incredible.
Yeah, he's almost sort of following the path that Chris Gale had after he had sort of those rumblings with the West Indies Cricket Board. A journeyman in all of the franchise competitions. But you're right. He is probably one of the best T20 opening batsmen in the world right now. It's a crying shame that he's not in the England squad. Having said that, basically looking over the past form of the England squad, I mean, where'd you put him? That top order is looking harder and harder to get into. But you're right, Alex Hales is an immense batsman, and international cricket's loss is the hundreds gain.
Exactly. But I mean, if it were up to me, and when it came to the England selection, I would either way make a space for him. Someone else would have to drop out, because for me, he'd be up there in my number one squad. So going from who I think is probably arguably the best T20 batsman to the ICC ranked best T20 batsman at the moment, which is David Malan. Again, great to have that left-handed bat. He's obviously an opener, averages 49 in T20 internationals. He doesn't do so well with the T20 domestics. His averages are way higher, and his strike rate's much better for the internationals. So that's something to consider. He definitely does need to get his scores up and his credit up with the domestic franchise series. He went for a whopping $150,000 in the IPL auction to Kings Punjab this year. I wonder whether they've changed the payment format, the rate format, because I remember discussing this last year and saying he went for an absolute steal at 40K for the 100. And I tried to research it, and I can't see that his salary has changed bands at all. But the fact that he's just been bought in the IPL for 150,000 and Trent Rockets have him for 40,000. I mean, what's going on? Either way, Stephen Fleming doesn't care that he's got him in his squad.
Well, yeah, the weird thing that I've noticed about that is just the differential. So Chris Morris, we spoke to Kumar Sangakkara about how Chris Morris was sought after so much by Rajasthan. And I think it must be to do with the balance of the squads, because obviously Chris Morris didn't get selected for the 100. I mean, this might sound a bit strange or a bit controversial, but it's more to do with balancing your squad than the individual player, if that makes sense. And perhaps that's got something to do with it. But again, I'm not an economist. I'm certainly not a cricket economist, so I'm not sure.
But it's interesting as well, because obviously with privately owned franchises like the IPL, you never know, one of the owners may have a real soft spot for a certain player. And that is, the message from the dressing room as such is go out there and buy me that player. I want that player on my team. We've got Tom Moores to talk about next. He is another left-handed bat. He is a wicketkeeper, local lad. There's a lot of local lads here, as I said before, Stephen Fleming. That's definitely his tactics, to go for local players. He plays for Nottingham. He's really strong against spin, ideal for those middle over spin attacks. And his average is pretty good, 25. Strike rate 136, and he has had some Abu Dhabi T10 experience. Normally bats around number 4. We have another wicketkeeper coming up next. We've got Ben Cox. He plays for Worcestershire. Really neat wicketkeeper, highly regarded in the county game. And he had the highest number of dismissals in the Vitality T20 in 2019. He's also really capable of big hitting. His average is 27 in T20, but in my opinion, when it comes to choosing between the two wicketkeepers, they're probably going to go more for Tom Moores than Ben Cox, but we'll see. It's good to have a backup wicketkeeper in there anyway. We've got Luke Wright, all-rounder from Sussex. Sussex white ball specialist, a favourite of Chris's.
Right, I love him so much.
You're glad he got kept then. Top order batsman, and according to ESPN, he is the Duracell bunny of English cricket, because he has boundless energy and enthusiasm. Right arm, medium pace bowler. He's got Abu Dhabi T10 experience. He actually is the captain for Team Abu Dhabi. And under him plays Ben Cox, Alex Hales, so teammates from Trent Rockets.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That's useful as well to have that experience in high intensity short format games as well. We have Stephen Mulleney, local lad from Notts. He is in the very small list of players to make 100 on debut for Notts, and he's got a really good T20 bowling average and economy rate. Very reliable all-rounder, and his strike rate with the bat is 141, so really decent there.
Fabulous.
Another local lad, we've got Matthew Carter, who is a right arm off-break bowler for Nottingham, good economy rate. Went for 60k last year, which I thought was quite pricey, especially considering David Milan went for 40. But it really shows Stephen Fleming's belief in the bowlers, the local bowlers, knowing their conditions, and it really sort of being a success rate for the team. He gets used a lot in the power play. T20 Blast, he was used a lot for the power plays and really excellent with that white ball. And he's also good against both right and left arm batsmen, so that's good to have. Right, we've got Luke Wood from Nottingham again. Well, he was from Nottingham, now he plays for Lancashire. Left arm medium pace bowler, does really well in the T20 Blast. Primarily a new ball bowler. He has an economy of 6.47 in the power play, which is fantastic. He'll definitely be used in the earlier overs here because that is a great economy rate. But also he's really good at the death overs. He took 6 wickets in 39 balls for Nottingham 2 years ago in the T20 Blast in the death overs. So he's got a really good ability to swing the ball back into the right-handers. And he was this year in the ECB training camp in South Africa, the bowling training camp. So England definitely have their eye on him as well. So we'll see what happens with him after the 100. Now, those were all the players that were retained by Stephen Fleming, and they're pretty much all of them were retained. Yeah. The only 2 to miss out were Harry Gurney, who was actually picked up by the Manchester Originals, yes, and Luke Fletcher. So replacing those 2, he went with Samit Patel from Nottingham, an all-rounder, 36 years of age, good experience, right-handed bat, slow left-arm orthodox bowling, T20 batting average of 25, and a bowling economy of 7, so pretty decent all-rounder. Middle-order batsman and lots of experience. He has T10 experience, BBL, he had PSL, he had BPL, so he's been all around the world, great experience to have. And lastly, they went with Tim van der Gugten, right arm, fast medium pace bowler, Australian born, but he played for the Netherlands. Now, interestingly, he's allowed in the squad not under the Kolpak laws because and with post-Brexit, all of the rules have changed, but because he's got settled status in the UK through a European passport, he was entitled to stay as a local player. Right. So he plays for Glamorgan, and his T20 bowling average is 20 with an economy of 7.
Nice.
So nice. A pretty decent team there, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good, especially, they got a couple of players were released, but getting Samit Patel and Tim van der Gugten is a great acquisition. Samit Patel, I always thought was the one that got away for England, and such a useful player. Left arm spin, takes it away from the bat. We're seeing more and more how useful taking the ball away from a bat is. And his middle order striking is great. He's obviously a fantastic player for Notts. He's been playing in the PSL. Absolute masterclass of selection there with the changes. But I think that's really, really strong. But that actually segues quite well onto the women's squad, because just like Stephen Fleming's onus on getting local players, the same can be said with the women's squad. With the possible exception of the coach, who is Sally Ann Beams, and she's the women's head coach of Cricket Tasmania women's programme. So she's come over from Tasmania. I think you mentioned one of the players was playing for Hobart, so maybe there's some connection there. We don't know. But anyway, like we say, a lot of them, much like the other teams, they come from the restructured and actually quite sort of like a franchise structure of the women's domestic competition in the UK. So a lot of them are going to be playing from what was Loughborough Lightning and is now, they're just called Lightning. Some of them are from Central Sparks, but we'll get to that. But the head England centrally contracted player is Catherine Brunt, absolute legend of a strike bowler. She's been opening the bowling for England for ages. And she's also a big hitter as well, so it's pretty good. And again, a T20 economy of 5.46. Not bad, right?
5. To be in the 5s is unheard of, actually, so that's pretty good. I mean, Rashid Khan's in the economy of 6, and he's like the king of the white ball bowling, so that's pretty good.
Definitely. So obviously Catherine Brunt's in. She's not far off 100 T20 international wickets now. So I think she's got about 7 left to go. But anyway, we'll move on because Catherine Brunt is obviously one half of a power couple of English cricket. Her fiance and her teammate, Nat Siver, is also on the squad. And apparently she's got her own shot that's named after it. I found this on the 100 website. It's called the Natmeg. Apparently, she basically hits the ball between her legs. Yeah, unusual shot, but hey, the 100 is where we need unusual shots, right?
Oh my God, amazing. I can't even picture that. That must be really difficult to do without like falling back on your wicket or, well, I can't see that in action.
It's odd, yeah. Paul Collingwood used to play some odd shots against spinners, and I'd imagine it looks strange, but you remember the first time Dilshan did the Dill scoop, everyone went, what the hell is he doing? But anyway, she actually just captained England when Heather Knight was injured. So she has had some captaincy experience. All-rounder, she's scored over 1,000 runs in T20 internationals, batting average of 25 and a bowling average of 19. Great acquisition.
I actually saw a really funny interview the other day on, actually, Catherine and Nat were both on Sky Sports being interviewed about the 100. I think Nat has been awarded the captaincy of Trent Rockets, and they were saying to Catherine, you know, how is it having, you know, your fiance being your captain and all of this stuff? And they basically were just talking about how they've just really established themselves really well in terms of when they're on the field, they are teammates, they're cricket players, and you know, everyone's been so supportive of them as well in terms of having a relationship off the field and being, you know, working together on the field, and it just works really well. So they're super supportive of each other, and they've got great banter between themselves. They're both really funny women. So yeah, it's great to have both of them in the same team.
Especially knowing each other's games as well on the pitch, it's going to be great. But we will move on to the international players. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit confusing because they technically have 4 players that play for another country, as in don't play for England. But we'll get to that. But the 3 that are classed as overseas players, unsurprising, we are seeing a familiar story here. They generally all come from the same nation. So the Trent Rockets have picked up 3 Australian overseas players. They've picked up Elise Villani, Annabelle Sutherland, and Sophie Molyneux. Now, Elise Villani is a legend of Australian cricket, middle order batsman, very big hitting. And she has actually played with Nat Siver and a few others for the Melbourne Stars because they all play in the BBL together. Elise Villani can bowl, but of recent times, she generally bats more in short form cricket. She's got a strike rate of 118, has got 12 50s. My prediction is that she's probably going to be more of a batting all-rounder. But like we say, the great option of having those 5 balls or 10 balls is that if you've got your opening bowler and their first 5 balls have been knocked out of the park, you can use an Elise Villani to put on and just see if they can make something happen. Next up, Annabelle Sutherland. She is predominantly a bowler, but is an all-rounder. It's still quite early in her career at the moment because she's only 19 years old. Does play for Melbourne Stars, but her stats aren't particularly impressive on the international level, but it says a lot that she was at the time the youngest player to ever play in the BBL. I think she was 15 when she played her first match.
Wow. Jeez, I didn't think you could play it like when you were 15. That's incredible.
But I reckon Annabelle Sutherland is going to be operating in the sort of middle overs. That's kind of where I reckon she's going to be. But the third and final one is Sophie Molyneux, another Australian all-rounder, left-hand bat. So again, great to mix up left-hand, right-hand combinations. Does bowl slow left arm. And in T20 internationals, her bowling average is 20 and her economy is 5.9. So again, under that magic number 6. She only played in 1 match when Australia won the World Cup a year or 2 ago. And the 1 match that she did play was against South Africa, and she dismissed the very, very dangerous Lizelle Lee, which was crucial to Australia winning that match. But anyway, let's move on. Let's go to the one that is not an overseas player, but there are definitely arguments to be made that perhaps well, they certainly don't play for England. It's Catherine Bryce. Now, Catherine Bryce, you always hear the term freak bandied about. I know people talk about that with Joss Butler, for example. Catherine Bryce, you just look at her stats. She is just an astounding cricket player. So in T20, her batting average is 50 in 14 matches, a 50 batting average, and her bowling average in T20s. What do you reckon? Where do you reckon?
I'm going to say anything below 20 is good.
Keep going. Her bowling average is 9.
What?
9. Can you believe that? She's...
And for an all-rounder as well. It's not even like for a specialist bowler. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. She actually won in December 2020. She was named the ICC Associate Cricketer of the Decade. And I think with stats like that, it's pretty hard to argue against it. Catherine Bryce, she's got to be in the top order for me. That's
Getting the impression she is one of your favourites. One to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, something goes without saying, really. But then let's get into some of the other players. We have Lucy Hyam.
Very well respected amongst the county scene in the women's game. She's the captain of Notts, plays for Lightning.
23, predominantly an off-break bowler. Made a couple of list A 50s, so very useful with the bat. Her domestic T20 bowling average is 18.6 and her strike rate is 20. Nancy Harman is the next player. Nancy Harman is a bowler and she again plays for Lightning. List A bowling average of 16.98. So again, List A, it's longer form cricket, but with a List A average of 16, you can bowl. That's pretty good. And she also has a List A batting average of 22. So again, I think she's going to be lower down the order, but does have a high score of 96, so we'll see. And bowls leg spin, so that's kind of what she's going to be utilised for. And last but not least, we have a wicket keeper. I remember going through this list, going, "Where's the wicket keeper?" But we have one, Abby Freeborn. She's a wicket keeping all rounder. Again, used to play in Sussex and then moved to Lightning. When she was on debut, she made 58 off 40, so that's pretty good on debut. And I think there's a lot to be said for how well you perform on your debut, and this says it all, really. But just like we hear so much in the media, I think Abby Freeborn is going to be somebody who is going to be a massive beneficiary of what the 100 is and can do for women's cricket. So we only have 10 so far. There's still some more domestic players for them to pick up. But again, based on their overseas and the acquisition of Catherine Bryce and Catherine Brunt and Nat Siver, it's looking pretty strong.
It is looking strong. So I'm just thinking what they're missing out on. Potentially some more middle over batsmen.
Yeah, and a good strong opener to put up there. I reckon Elise Villani and Catherine Bryce will be in the top order. And I reckon, Nat Siver and Sophie Molyneux will be sitting more in the middle order.
There was always talks and rumours that potentially the Indian women would be allowed to come over and play in an international franchise.
We have seen international signings are still going. So at the time of this recording, we are recording on March the 19th. There was an announcement yesterday that a very prolific player in Australia women's cricket just signed for a team that we haven't recorded yet. But we'll hold on to that nugget of information. But, they're going to keep coming as we see. And who knows? Getting India and Indian eyeballs involved in this game in any way, shape or form is only going to benefit it. Anyway, so let's round up. Obviously, we've got a few more teams to cover and do the breakdowns. But as we said before, if you're not liked and subscribed yet, please do. And also follow us on Twitter at 100 Report, on Instagram at The 100 Report. And if you're watching this, it's on YouTube. So give us that thumbs up and give us a subscribe. But anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
See you later. Take care.